Okay. Hello, everyone. Um, I've decided to do my presentation on the Odu language and its people. There's not much extensive research done on this language, unlike the Agta languages. However, I think that there was enough information here to make connections and infer. So, to start, the Odu language is an Austroasiatic language categorized as a Khmuic language, which is a language family that is found in central Laos. It's a verbal language and it's not written, and it's considered extremely endangered and borderline extinct. Now, dictionaries and grammar rules have only been written for the most prominent Austroasiatic languages, and unfortunately for us, Odu is not very prominent. Thus, linguistic analysis doesn't really widely exist for it. Now, I'm not an expert on linguistics, but from what I was able to gather, Odu is very closely related with the Khmu language. So, for the phonology, the vowels of the Khmu show little variation across the dialects, with all varieties having 19 monophthongs. So, monophthong is a fancy word for vowels that have a single perceived auditory quality. An example in English would be teeth. So, when you say teeth, it only has one tone and your mouth position doesn't move. So, a unique thing about the Odu language. And again, this is really for the Khmu language, which is extremely closely related, is that it has 19 different of, or 19 monophones. Um, so now I'm going to attempt to say a couple of words in Khmu, which is supposed to sound just like Odu. Um, I guess I'll start with the Samaila Domemangma, which means hello, what is your name? All right, moving on to that, off of that. Um, who speaks this language? So there are about 400 people alive who speak Odu. Now, 200 roughly are recorded in Vietnam, and then there are an estimated 200 in Laos based on the limited data collected there, which I'm going to speak about momentarily. The Odu people's ancestors belonged to the Ban Man Kingdom, which was an autonomous region covering the areas of central Laos and Vietnam. So, Laos and Vietnam border each other. So, what you're looking at in the red is the two regions that overlap. If you see Vietnam fits into that red, it's kind of like a puzzle piece. Another thing about the Odu people is that they practice animism, and it's one of the few ethnic groups in Laos and Vietnam that was untouched by religious expansion, and they remained practitioners of shamanism and spirit worship. Now, moving forward about the social circumstances of the Odu people. Um, the Odu people have a relatively low incomes, and they have a very high illiteracy rate with few children going to school for mostly financial reasons. They're considered an Aboriginal ethnic group and are classified as an official minority nationality in Vietnam, but not in Laos. Now, this is why there's an estimated number of Odu people in Laos and not a solid number like there is in Vietnam. It's unknown if the Odu people in Laos were even counted among another minority group in the census or just ignored entirely. They have a very weak relationship with the nation state and an even worse relationship to neighboring ethnic minorities, neighboring in not just the country but in the around as well, like neighboring countries. An example of this relationship is the popularized nickname for the Odu people, and a lot of people call them Odu Tai Hat or Hat, which means rag people with a derogatory connotation. Additionally, the Odu people rely primarily on slash and burn agriculture as well as cattle raising, but their occupations also generally include weaving, hunting, and gathering. And again, they live a sedentary lifestyle, whereas before they were more nomadic and they moved with what they needed. Uh, so moving forward from that, there are three major factors explaining why the Odu language is an endangered language, as well as why the Odu culture in general is in danger of extinction. So the first one has to do with the tendency for Odu families to be mixed and not stay purely Odu, as Professor Dang states in this first quote here from the Vietnam Museum of Ethnology. He says, nowadays, there is no pure Odu family. They married Khmu or Thai people. It's one reason why the Odu are the second smallest ethnic group of Vietnam's 54 ethnic groups. Now, this is also why I chose the Khmu language to be closely related to Odu, because it, based on this uh, statistic right here, they do mingle and intermarry between these two different languages and language groups. So I thought it would be a better comparison than trying to find something on Odu, which again doesn't really exist. Now, secondly, for endangered language factors, the Odu people have been persecuted and targeted several times throughout history, including by the Taidam, the Han Chinese, the Hmong, as well as the Khmu peoples. Now, the Odu people were captured in masses for slavery, resulting in constant relocation. Now, as a result of this persecution, many Odu people needed to hide their ethnic origins, their language, customs, and even their names in order to mingle with other ethnic groups and kind of leave that stigma of, Odu people being slaves behind. Now, what that ended up doing is leaving the language of Odu more familiar to the elderly than to younger generations. So, right now, it is only the elderly generation that speaks this language. Otherwise, the younger generation speaks Thai. Lastly, there are no current policies or programs in place to deal with the loss of diversity among the Odu, so this also serves to explain the endangered nature of the language and why it's not getting any better. Okay, so moving on from that, some argue that language loss is an inevitable byproduct of socioeconomic development in an era of globalizing nation states. Others believe that preserving a diverse linguistic heritage is a critical part of building a sustainable future. Now, my opinion is that language loss is a byproduct of globalization, so the first part of that one. As we've learned in our course, many cultures have adopted the religions and customs of foreigners where and when it best suited them, such as the example of holy water and the abandonment of pork for agricultural reasons. Now, the arrival of Islam and Christianity, and more importantly, their adoption in many Southeast Asian cultures, is direct evidence that socioeconomic development has changed customs, and it'll continue to do so. Global consumer demand for goods has changed entire communities in Southeast Asia in regards to language, religion, marriage, and even exports and imports. So, especially now in our era of technology, it's going to continue to do so now more than ever. And I believe that language loss will continue to happen as some of these communities become more and more in touch with technology and globalization and expansion. Thank you.